Hey everyone, welcome back to the Startup Sense podcast. This is your host, Jonah Lupton, and we have a really great episode for you today. So stick with us. On the phone, we have Kelcy Pegler. He's a multi-founder, I guess. So he started a company called Roof Diagnostics Solar back in late 2011 and sold that company 3 years later for a ton of money. Sold it to NRG, which is a multi-billion-dollar global energy company. And then he spent about 2 years with NRG and then started a new company or a new business, which is sort of a passion project, but growing nicely called MemberWhen. And that website is memberwhen.com, which is you see that in the show notes. And that is a website that helps people with storytelling. So parents, grandparents, siblings, the magic of audio, something that lives on forever and ever. Once our loved ones pass away, we still have their voices. Pretty cool. I've actually got in our pre-call, I kind of teared up a little bit just talking to him about it. So let's welcome Kelcy to the show. Kelcy, how are you, man?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me.
So you have a lot going on, but let's kind of start at the beginning of the timeline. So tell us about Roof Diagnostics, how you guys started that business, and then we'll get into the growth and the exit and everything else.
Sure. So, I guess a little about what got me there. I was a child with reasonable intelligence and an unreasonable attention span. I couldn't pay attention, couldn't sit down in class, and really figured out that I loved competition, which I guess manifested, in athletics. Carried me through college. I played basketball in college, and shortly after graduating and getting into the business world, realized quite happily that, wow, you can kind of just tie into the competitive spirit that you have in the business world, and that can lead to some success. So I had a short stint, a couple years in business benefits working with MetLife, where I was just completely driven by this little nonsense leaderboard that they had in our office for what they called rookies and freshmen, freshmen and sophomores, where they just kept a leaderboard for your sales, and it was an incentive-based thing, and I just got obsessed with keeping my name at the top of it. So I had a little bit of success in the first 2 years, just being driven to get my name on the top of that stupid board. And then I joined my father in a business he had, which was a roofing consulting company, and started a residential group within there, had some success, and some of the success that we built in that division spurred what eventually became Roof Diagnostics Solar, a residential sales and installation company, which grew quite explosively. We started it with zero revenue and 12 employees, and 3 years later, over 500 employees and $100 million in revenue. And as you mentioned, we were acquired by a big Fortune 200, and I went on to continue to lead that business for the next few years.
So there's a lot there, of course. I mean, how you guys grew that business so fast is something I'd love to dive into. So, I mean, not even sure where to really start, but so you took your father's business, or he was in the roofing business, saw an opportunity to get into solar. I mean, who did you start hiring around you, or did you become an expert in solar first? I mean, how did it all come together? Because, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot happening at that time.
There is. And it's funny you asked that, because that was actually one of the more underappreciated points that helped propel our success. See, the solar industry is unique because, especially when we were doing this 7 years ago, there was not, and to some degree still is not, a job pool of solar installers or solar experienced people. It's such a new marketplace.
Right.
So one of the challenges was, like, who do you bring in? We barely knew enough to sell and install a job ourselves. And what we found was, in the solar space, you were really getting the people in the construction trades that were the smartest of the smart. It's a clean construction industry, where literally and figuratively. But what we found was you really needed to get a network of people that were conscientious and cared, and that really carried our install base. And one of our first major hires was a recruiter who I don't know how, we all have our own positions in little corners of the universe, but I remember the first year and a half of business, most of my time on a daily basis was spent with our lead recruiter who was bringing in talent. So that was a major part of our success.
So, okay. So I'm just trying to think of everything that you just said, right? So it's not like you start a software company or hardware business or a consumer product company. I mean, there are millions of people across the country, with backgrounds that would probably suit the role. But like you said, in solar, it's so new, hard to find the right people. Now, you guys were in Jersey, right? Based in Jersey.
Yeah, we started in New Jersey, and while it seems kind of opaque and maybe a little like broad, it's not. It wasn't that tricky, right? There were only a couple things we needed to do right to win. The first thing was we needed to sell solar projects. These are big ticket items, $30,000 a pop, a bit of a technical sale. But at the end of the day, the value proposition was quite simple. Well, we were helping people buy electricity, which they're used to buying, just in a cleaner, more cost-efficient way. So part of the challenge for us was how do we bring in the right team of sales experts to help educate customers about the opportunity. So we were really good at lead generation. We had great opportunities, so that helped us hire a really strong sales force because we were good business partners with that sales force. And that was a big part of our success. And then the second real value driver for the business was, okay, now that you sold these projects, how do you install them? And that was the challenge of hiring enough talented electrician and skilled tradesmen that could quickly and efficiently install solar systems while providing our customers a really great experience so that they would recommend us to other people.
Now, how were you guys generating leads back then?
It's funny, we really leaned into like the fossil ways of lead generation. Our most successful ad campaign was a black and white 3-inch by 3-inch square in the newspaper.
Really?
We were doing newspaper ads. We were doing radio ads. We had some successful television commercials, which started out locally. And they were all the main drivers of our lead generation. As our company grew, we tied into some unique partnerships, not the least of which was with Home Depot. We had a really great partnership where we were able to do lead generation in the front of somewhere around 250 Home Depot stores.
Wow.
And then what started as local newspapers and local radio and local television grew into regional as our business grew throughout the Northeast.
How did you guys get that deal done with Home Depot?
A little bit of persistence, a little bit of fortune, and a lot of both, I guess. But we had some exposure to it through some of the partners we worked with in residential solar, and we really saw the value in Home Depot. So the thesis, which I had was
the people that go into Home Depot are a lot of homeowners, and that's same with like newspaper and radio, right? Those are consumed media by older people who are traditionally homeowners versus the millennials that are probably renters. At least that's how I see it.
Yeah, the Home Depot relationship was especially unique because for us in our business, a homeowner aimlessly walking around a store thinking about their home, you could not create a better prospective client or a better atmosphere to engage them in. So that was really kind of the golden egg for us. And we just invested in it from a time and effort and passion perspective greater than the other players who were attempting to participate in the Home Depot partnership. And we started out as one of a group of companies, and then we ended up as one of two companies which had the relationship, just because we kind of through force of will of making and investing and really caring about it, our performance just led to us taking a major part of the market share with that partnership.
And did you give them some sort of a revenue share, or were you guys paying them to kind of, have a booth set up in, the front of their stores?
So there's so it's confidential, so I can't.
Okay.
But Home Depot makes sure to participate with their partners, and they're a great partner. They, I think, understand. Home Depot. It's not lost on them how powerful their brand is, but they participate in the value chain of all the customers that walk through their stores.
So for anyone that's not familiar with the sales process of solar, I've gone through it recently, but maybe you can tell us, from the point you engage with the customer, whether they contact you or you see them in, Home Depot and get into a conversation, what are the steps what happens next before the actual installation?
So there's two parts to solar. There's how are you going? There's your system, which is the tangible, the products of the system that go on your roof and the inverter and the electrical components that make it work. And then there's the financial product of which you get your system. Most people go solar by the form of what's called a power purchase agreement or a lease, which is a way to continue to buy your electricity monthly, but to pay for your electricity through a financial partner instead of the utility company. So when you get a proposal for solar, and then the alternative would be to just buy it outright for cash. And there's some federal and some state incentives in some of the states. But the first part is, how is the customer going solar? And as I mentioned, most people are doing it with a power purchase agreement or a lease. And the basic economics are, let's say the average homeowner has a $200 monthly electric bill. Roughly, going solar would provide you the ability to get your get your electricity for $160 a month. So let's call it a 20% savings off of your utility bill, no out-of-pocket cost to do so, and you will sign up to buy your electricity through that solar company for the next 20 years. That little simplified, but overall,
Yeah,
that's how solar works.
Okay.
And then on the back end, we as a solar company would have to design the system. Average system's going to have somewhere around 26 panels. They're going to go on your roof. We need to ascertain how much shade your roof has, how much electricity you use, and some of the architectural and engineering issues that go into it. And solar is a little tough from a regulation side. We have to get permits from your township. We have to get utility interconnection, so approval, and then we have to have any state incentives and federal incentives filed for. So the timeline for a solar project is quite long compared to other construction projects. I think nationally you'd see the average time to install from the date somebody signs up for solar being close to 100 days.
Wow.
And that's frustrating for a lot of people,
Right.
not the least of which is the company that has to, fill out all the paperwork to get there. But by my last count, there were somewhere around 50 steps to complete a solar project.
Jesus.
And the majority of them are administrative. The physical steps of doing the installation were somewhere around 6 or 7.
Has it gotten any easier or shorter over the last 5 years, or is it just as cumbersome?
There's a lot of attention being paid to how to make it easier. The challenge is utility companies are all different and independent to some right under their own regulations. So it has not gotten easier. But if you talk to some of the smarter people in solar, I think what is universally agreed upon is if they just standardized
Right.
the permits and regulatory things, it would make for a much easier industry. But therein lies maybe the purpose of why it's not. I think there's at least some groups that would like it to continue to be a little challenging for solar.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think about, it's like the legal system. I mean, yes, every state has its own laws and regulations and the finer details, but at the end of the day, you're setting up a C Corp or an LLC with your attorney. The process is pretty uniform across the board. You might pay a higher fee in one state or the other, but it sounds like the solar industry is way too tedious. And like you said, the utility companies probably have an incentive to keep it that way. This is Jonah Lupton, founder of Joule and host of the Startup Sense podcast. At Joule, we help entrepreneurs and startup founders build, launch, and grow their companies by providing superior technology, marketing, and consulting services. We help clients of all sizes, budgets, and industries. We put our clients in the best position to raise capital, grow revenues, hire employees, and maximize their profits. For more information or to set up a free consultation with our team, please visit our website at jool.net. That's JOOL.net. Why did you sell the company? What was happening 3 years after you started that you guys decided that NRG was the right partner at that time?
Well, when you start a business, you do it for a lot of reasons, but financially there was an opportunity to capitalize on an industry which was brand new. If it were a lifestyle business, we probably would have stopped about halfway from where we grew in the 3 years and just continued on a path to, we were profitable. It would have been a comfortable type of lifestyle business. That just wasn't in my DNA. We continued to grow explosively. And the risk you take on as you grow at the pace and cadence at which we were growing gets pretty intense. And we continued to do it profitably, and we had a lot of things break our way. But at some point, the company becomes more valuable to a larger company. And essentially, you're able to take some of the risk, or all of the risk, if you will, off the table.
And most of your employees became employees of NRG as well?
They all did, yeah. So that was very important to me. The people are really what make the business work, and it's the most enjoyable part of it. So I looked at it as really an extension of my family. I put so much into that business, and the sector was growing, and it provided opportunity for everyone that was on my team and the people that joined the team after the acquisition. So that was one of the highlights during my time in the space.
And what is NRG? What is that? What has Roof Diagnostics Solar done inside of NRG since that deal?
So we had a great several years after the acquisition. We went, I think at the time we were acquired, we were 8th in national market share, Roof Diagnostics. We went on to, I think at the apex, we were 3rd in national market share, challenging for the second place, which was largely the mandate given to us. So we really grew explosively post-acquisition as well. The challenges really existed in the space. The market dynamics in residential solar, maybe partly because of the presidential election, partly because of the unique financial and accounting structure that exists in residential solar. But there were some headwinds that brought some major changes to NRG specifically, but broadly the whole renewable energy space. Sometime about a year ago, the CEO of NRG was let go, David Crane. He was a real driving force behind the momentum at NRG to shift and become a little more innovative and more green focused, if you will. And when he was let go, NRG's sentiment changed kind of in line with the marketplace, and we've seen a lot of businesses shift away from renewable energy.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thanks for clearing that up. With regards to growing that business, I mean, what was the biggest challenge if you look back over those 3 years? What was the biggest challenge you guys had?
It really came down to using your time and prioritizing properly. So commonly when you were growing, you had to make decisions on where do you spend most of your time, because there were so many new avenues and new opportunities that were opening up, and trying to decide what are the things that might be good to pursue, but you just don't have the bandwidth to provide the right attention. So the biggest challenge was prioritizing, I think, what to spend the most amount of time on.
How did you prioritize it? I mean, where were you spending most of your time?
So I made a few really good decisions, like the Home Depot and identifying
Right.
partners, and at the end of the day, the good decisions boiled down to really simplistic thinking, which was, what are we really good at, and how do we do that as often as we can? And we were really good at customer acquisition, and we were really good at installation. So I think what gave us an advantage and made us an inventional winner in the space was the fact that we really leaned into the things we were best at, and we avoided, to a large degree, the things that weren't our core competency. We stayed away from the project finance side of the business when a lot of our competitors took it on themselves to become vertically integrated and to do some things that really widened the types of competencies that they needed, while we really just focused on the couple things we did really well.
Gotcha. Okay. Any big mistakes that you guys made along the way?
Well, not to sound like cliche, but I think any of the mistakes we made were opportunities to learn. But we probably, in retrospect, California was a huge market. And we eventually, post-acquisition, attempted to move into the market when it became more competitive and it was more saturated and it proved more difficult to execute in, where we either could have stayed out of the market completely and continued to go heavier into the markets where we were so successful, or could have made the decision to move into that market at a much earlier date where we could have had our competitive advantages before the market was saturated. So I don't know how I would have played that differently, but certainly that was one of the things that crossed the desk.
With my new company, SoundGuard, my goal is to grow the company to $100 million in sales over the next 3 years. What are 2 things I need to do to make that happen, you think?
So you want to, where are you now? So are you willing to share how much you're at now?
Well, to be honest, we haven't launched the company yet.
Okay, all right.
We're creating the world's first soundproof paint for commercial residential use.
Okay, so what would I do to make that product get to $100 million?
I mean, I would not necessarily this product. I'm just talking about anyone building, a service type business. Since you guys were really in the sales, marketing, installation, so that's to me that's service related. So anyone, it could be a painting company, it could be a construction business, it could be a plumbing business. I mean, any of these service related businesses. But what are the key takeaways that you learned, in those 3 years that we can try to implement into our own businesses?
Yeah. So I think the lead generation, if you can be the leader of your space in generating the attention, I think it's your game to lose. So when you control the flow of interested parties considering your product, and then I guess the second part of that is facilitating a company culture where everyone is bought into the customer acquisition, because really what that becomes is a culture that's just customer driven, right? You're everything from the sales teams to the admin staff to the install teams to the accountants to everyone on your team is bought into the fact that winning new customers and winning new accounts is what's going to make this company successful. I think that's the main driver. So winning the lead generation game, and then having a company where everyone, not just the sales department, is thrilled every single time you get a new customer. Those are, I think, 2 of the main components of success.
The last question before we jump into your next business is, how do you hire the right salespeople? Any tips for finding them, where to find them, or how to screen them properly? I mean, you guys, and actually I'll ask, what was the compensation structure of your sales reps? Was it salary plus commissions, or was it straight commission?
We were a salary plus commission. Solar is a unique product in that the ticket price is relatively high, so the customer acquisition cost can be a little more generous. So I think we were on a higher end of a scale from a sales compensation standpoint. But I really focused on looking for So our most successful group of salespeople were educators, people that identified as being educators, and literally and figuratively, like
Oh,
we actually hired people who were school teachers during the day and then would moonlight as solar sales representatives after school.
really cool.
We had a lot of success there. I made a habit out of hiring, not exactly in the hand-to-hand, sales positions, but a lot of the support staff. I had a lot of success hiring people that had experience. It sounds silly, but it's true. I never really deep dived into the corollaries, but we hired a lot of people that had worked at Starbucks in the past, and I don't
Okay.
know, I've not
No,
really
I
thought it
believe it.
through, but
Those people are just
I
happy and like they have the
yeah.
demeanor that you need of someone that's in customer service that's probably dealing with an unhappy person on the other end of the phone, and they got to stay happy and calm. And no, that's pretty cool. I'm glad you shared that.
Yeah, and mostly though, and I think I understand most of your audience here are entrepreneurial, but your company, your whole company, really needs to embrace the sales staff. So often, I've been doing some consulting as of late, and you see these companies where it's like you have the company, and then kind of the stepchild of the company is the sales group, and they typically don't work in the office in the same way. They are all over the place depending on the business. They're either out on sales appointments or whatever they're doing. But I made a real effort to make sure that our whole company embraced and viewed as a teammate and rallied around the sales. And that goes two ways. That you need, as the leader of the business, you need to make sure that your company feels empowered and a team of the sales group. And then vice versa, you need to make sure that your sales group doesn't just have their sales pitch and the assets they need to sell the project, but you need to keep them tied into the people that are doing different things for the company. And when you really drive your company around the sales culture, I think that is the most important part in an explosive growth environment, to be cohesive and have a shared vision.
Awesome. That is fabulous advice. I'm glad I jumped into those last couple of questions. I really appreciate that. Let's talk about your next business. And I asked you on the pre-call if this is more of a business or a passion project, and you kind of said it's a little bit of both. But talk to us about MemberWhen. What exactly are you guys doing over there?
Sure. MemberWhen is a business that creates personalized podcasts. So maybe some of your audience, like me, had listened to the podcast Serial, which when I listened to it, and I guess Serial is kind of the podcast that brought podcasting to the mass public, if you will. And it's funny, I just read something, I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but it's directionally accurate. Serial had 5 million downloads, I believe, in the first month when
Wow.
its season 1 came out. Their most recent podcast from the Serial group, which is called S-Town, had 20 million in the first week.
That's
So that's
insane.
just evidence of how quickly the space is growing. But I listened to the podcast Serial and I said, wow, this format is just exciting. It was counterintuitive because it was all audio in a time where people were, harping on video being the future.
Yeah.
And just the production quality of the music and the narrator and the subjects and the interviews going back and forth, and it was quick, and I said, this is fantastic, this is great. And in a moment of self-importance, I said, wouldn't it be great if I could capture my own story, not to be published, but just to preserve and to maybe someday share with my kids? And like I said, probably a moment of narcissism, but I went on Google like anybody does nowadays, right? And I said, who can do this for me? And the business didn't exist. And so it started as a scratch to my own itch. Sometime very shortly after conceiving the concept, I lost my cousin tragically and suddenly. And it hits you when you lose someone today that you have so many visuals of that person. I have literal photos. I have mental images, and I can remember my cousin almost perfectly visually. But you lose their voice, and that's what you yearn for. I wish I could hear my cousin's voice every day. And I said, I'm going to create a company that helps people tell their stories and captures the moments and the sounds and the stories that are important to all of us, and makes us, which is the essence of who we are as humans. And if I do this right, none of our clients are ever going to have to say, "I wish I could hear from somebody again." We're gonna get people telling their stories. We're gonna help people capture their parents and their own voice and the things that are important to them. And we're doing it. We've been doing it for a year now. I can say we have evangelist customers. We haven't marketed yet, partly because every time we provide somebody an episode and they share it with their intimate circle for the most part, we end up getting 3 new customers for every 1 customer we've acquired. So it's been really, as you mentioned, a passion project, but I'm incredibly enthused about the business prospects for the concept and the business.
So what's the process for the customer? They come to the website, and then what happens after that?
So the main use of our product today is using it as a gift. So we were talking before, we're similarly aged in our 30s. We are a typical demographic where somebody in their 30s or 40s are buying it for their parents. This is the biggest use case, right? You, and let's say you have 2 siblings, decide that you're going to give your mother a really good Mother's Day present. So it's a 2-episode package. We sell it $300 an episode, or 2 episodes for $500. And you and your 2 siblings on the first episode are going to talk about your childhood and your mother and your memories of being a kid, and how great your life was and how much you appreciate your mother. You're going to give that to her as a gift. She's going to listen to it. And inevitably, she's going to say, "This is the best thing I ever heard." She's going to be crying. She's going to hug you guys. You guys are going to be thrilled that you gave it to her. You're the heroes. And then the second part of that gift is, "Mom, you're not done yet. Now it's your turn." And we're going to, with our storyographers, the same way we would have done with you and your siblings, we're going to do some interviews over the phone with your mother, very comfortable. We're going to ask her, we know the right questions to ask. We know how to solicit the best stories, maybe your father, maybe your mother's best friend. And you're going to get a different type of product that you've never actually heard your mother talk about her life when she was a kid and how she got to where she is today. And the best part, and the part that really makes me proud of what we're doing, is you're going to have that. You're going to have that forever. And when your children get older, you're going to be able to share with them, have you heard your grandma talk about when she was a kid? And I think it's the type of thing that makes our company fun and exciting today. But the longer our company exists, and as time passes and life goes on, I think our product becomes more and more invaluable.
And then you deliver this audio to the customer, so they're holding on to it. You guys don't hold on to this audio for them, do you?
No, we provide it in a secure web page where they're able to share it with anyone or no one, and it lives on a web page which the customer controls forever.
Okay, cool. So you talked to us about why you started the business. Are you funding this yourself?
Yes.
And is that the
So
plan
far.
for the? Okay, so
so it's self-funded. The growth prospects have increased, so we're now considering the potential to raise some money around it and maybe grow quicker and faster than we might have envisioned originally. And that's where we're at today.
When do you think you'll get into some paid marketing activity?
So we just started strategically assessing and putting together our plan for how we're going to approach the market. And I think within the next 4 weeks, we'll be doing some of our early marketing campaigns.
Which you alluded to before is kind of perfect leading up into Mother's Day and Father's Day, I would think.
Yeah, the product has been doing really well. What I found out is the gift market is underserved.
Yeah.
So, we live in this culture right now that I think is really being driven by experiences over things and objects. And what we have is a really unique experiential gift that provides you with this really tangible and lasting audio that is new and unique and custom. So the gifting market has really been good to us so far.
Yeah, I mean, when we were talking in the pre-call and you were telling me more about the business, I was getting teary-eyed because this is something I've thought about doing, for my parents at some point, as they get older into their late 60s and 70s now, with Mother's Day and Father's Day, and then of course, the holidays at the end of the year, Christmas and whatnot. I'm going to ask my siblings if this is something that they would like to do with me. So it's pretty cool. What are some of the cool stories that you've heard so far from some of your customers?
So I can tell you, I was our first customer, my wife and I, and I have two children, a 5-year-old boy and a 1-year-old girl, and our girl had just celebrated her 1-year birthday, and my wife and I went back and listened to the episode, which was just following her birth. I think we did our phone interviews 2 days after we brought our baby home. And when we listened to that a year later, we couldn't believe the details that seemed so mundane and simple, but you realize that would have forgotten and never possibly remembered. And we listened to this 20-minute episode about our daughter being born and our son's reaction, and my sister who came and stayed overnight and had to explain to my then 4-year-old son how having a baby works, and all of these details that would have just kind of passed by and would have been forgotten, and now we have them. And my wife said to me, she goes, geez, every year that our daughter Penny gets older, I'm going to listen to that, and it's just going to get better and better. So I think there's some unique use cases that people have yet to explore, but maybe we'll do a bit more of once we get the awareness increased. And then you have the more common use cases that people consider, like you did, like, hey, as my parents or grandparents get older, I want to capture their voices. And we had one specific case where, unfortunately, the week after we completed the interviews for an episode, a client's grandmother passed away. And it unfortunately smacks you in the face how valuable having that person in the true, genuine, and authentic voice, comfortable and being themselves is. And it makes me proud to know that we're having a positive impact on the people that use our product like that.
Is the hope that these customers will come back every year or every other year and tell more stories with the service?
It's funny because people, when they start with us, they say, oh, we got this one person with this one story that they need to tell. And in almost every case, and we're over hundreds now, we're over 200 clients. In almost every case, what starts as this one person needing to tell this one story becomes more episodes with more people. And it becomes this living product where once you find out Uncle Joe's story, you need to hear the flip side of that from his wife. And then, their children want to chime in. And it becomes a fun thing for everyone to provide. And in a lot of ways, it becomes a legacy that can really endure differently than most other ways.
So it's quite a change from, running a $100 million solar company to then starting this passion project. I mean, what's that transition been like for you?
Well, my calendar looks a little different.
Life's probably a little bit less stressful now, right?
Well, I think what I've discovered is if you're the type of personality I am, you'll find a way to get, I don't know if stress is the right word, but you'll find a way to engage passionately, whether it's a $100 million solar company or a startup that's aiming to help people tell their stories. I think my wife can attest to I have one speed. So when I dive into something, it's usually head first. But yeah, it's different. I think there's as many similarities. My real challenge is helping people understand how the product works and helping people become aware of what the product is, which is very similar to the success points in the solar space. And also similar is it's people. I'm working with fantastically talented people. I mean, every person I work with is more talented than I am in the things that they do, and helping them get comfortable and be empowered to be creative and push the envelope is a real part of it. And, it's a little bit different. I have a little bit of leeway now with MemberWhen because of maybe the phase that it's in, to be a little freer. We have a much more lax culture where people can work from home when they want to, and a lot of remote access stuff. And at the end of the day, I want to work with people that are proud to say they work for the company, and they're proud of the wins that they are a part of and the wins that their team is a part of. And I just want everybody rooting for each other and really proud of the work we're doing. And so far, I can say unequivocally that it's been a success.
How big can this company get, or this project get for you?
So that's where I'm not good, because if you would have asked us in the solar business how big we wanted to get, we probably would have set a limit. We would have said something smaller than what we did. So I'm not the best goal setter as it relates to sizes. But I will tell you that in the very near term, I'd like 5 people a day to sign up to get one of their stories told by MemberWhen. And I think if we can do that, that will be a real launching board for this to become the type of company that can impact many, many, many people.
And what happens once you start going global and you start having people from other parts of the world in different languages wanting to use the service? Is that ever going to happen, you think?
I'm clearly not scared of the growth. One of the things, when I set out to create this business, besides the reasons we just spoke of, I sat down and I said, what do I want in whatever I do next? And it boiled down to 3 things. And the first was because of my son. I said, I really want to do something cool. When my son's 12 years old, I want him to think, wow, my dad is cool. He's doing something cool. And with my daughter, it had this impact on me where I said, geez, I want her to think I'm doing something good, literally for the world. I want to be making this place better. And lastly, for myself and my whole family, with my wife and everything, I just want to have an impact. I want to impact a lot of people. And whether that be customers and employees, I really want to impact a lot of people. And that's where all these things kind of mesh together pretty well, where I said, wow, it would be cool to create this new concept where we can record people in their own voices, tell them the stories that matter to them and make them happy, and the people that care about them even happier. And I know it would be doing good to help people, capture their legacy and understand where they came from and who they are, and hear their parents' stories in their own voices long after they're gone. And I know that if we're successful, we're going to be able to impact the teammates that I have at MemberWhen. It's a reasonably headcount intensive business where people are doing the editing and people are doing the journalism and a lot of the roles there. And the amount of people that I think we can impact from helping capture and share the stories can be really intense. So, I don't know that it'll be me personally running this business forever. At some point, the skill sets needed from a technology standpoint probably exceed what I'm able to bring. But I'll forever be proud of having started the business, and I know that I've already been able to work with some tremendously talented people in helping grow the business so far.
Turn the business over to someone at some point. What do you think you'd work on next?
I don't know. I have a hard time knowing what I'm going to do this afternoon, let alone next year. But I'll keep, for now, I have those 3 defining principles where I want to find cool, I want to find good, and I want to have an impact. And as long as I can align those 3 things, I'm open. I'm open to the universe.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Really, really appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy. You got a lot on your plate. Any parting words for us? Obviously, I'll put all the information with MemberWhen, all the links and everything into the show notes. But is there any way that we can connect with you online, and how can we help you grow your business?
Sure. I'm always happy to hear from anyone and everyone. You can contact me directly at my email, which is kp@memberwhen.com. And really, I feel compelled to help people understand how MemberWhen can be such a great product. I've gifted it a few times, which has been one of the biggest growth points of our business, because even when I gift it to somebody, that we end up getting multiple episodes paid for after that. So I promise you, if you try our product, you're going to like it. But more than that, I'm really passionate about helping people capture the voices of those that they love. It as you mentioned, and we've talked about a couple times here, it really is a passion project. But look, I'm a fan of entrepreneurs. I think your show is fantastic. You get a lot of great stories and people that have done unique things. And I guess my parting acknowledgement from your show is the most common denominator that I can see or hear about the successful entrepreneurs that you talk to is action is winning. And what I take away as the enemy or adversary of people taking action is usually their attempt at perfection. I think if people would realize that doing anything in any way is always better than pushing it off. And so many times people push things off, whether it's starting a new business or, going to the gym or writing a letter, whatever it is, you're waiting for it to be perfect. And in most cases, if not all cases, it's never going to be perfect. So get your ass up and go to the gym, or pick up the pen and write the letter, even though you haven't thought about exactly how you want to word it, or start the business, because that initial action is the hardest part. And it's usually the thing that habits get built out of.
Love it. True wisdom right there. Totally agree. Well, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you sharing all this stuff with us. I mean, I could talk to someone like you for hours upon hours about everything you've done and learned along the way. And that's one reason I host the show, is I want to bring on founders and entrepreneurs like yourself, so you can give us some actionable advice that we can try to implement into our own businesses and hopefully someday be as successful as you've been. So thank you, and kudos to everything you've done. And I certainly wish you the best of luck with MemberWhen.
Thank you very much.
You got it, man. Talk to you soon, Kelcy.
Take care, Jonah.